So today I thought I would do a short video showing you how I carve Linocut gift tags. So I've come up with 3 sketches here for potential designs, and I've decided that the one in the middle is the one I'm going to use for my gift tags. So the gift tags look like this. They're just the really inexpensive manila gift tags that you can buy from stationers or online. I think these ones cost me about £2 for 50, so they're very inexpensive. Something I do like to do though is I like to take the string out and replace it with some twine. It's a lot more attractive when it's attached to a present with something like that on. It's a bit more aesthetically pleasing, and that's just really cheap twine too, so it's all still very budget friendly. For the printing though, I tend to take the string out completely. It just makes the printing process a lot easier. So the designs that I came up with, I made sure corresponded to the dimensions of the tag as well, so that when it's transferred it fits nicely in place. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of tracing paper, and I'm going to make a tracing of the drawn design using just graphite pencil. And it's going to remain quite sketchy. I'm not going to be perfect about it because once it's transferred to the block, sometimes minor things change and move around, and that's absolutely fine. As long as you've got a basic idea of your design, then you're flying. And I think some of these leaves are going to be quite tricky to carve because they're very small and close together. But we'll give it a try and see what happens. You don't learn anything by playing safe. And the idea behind this was a sort of buttonhole that I saw that I thought was really pretty. And it was made of, I think, spruce, which is a lovely tree. I did do a gift tag last year which featured yew tree with yew berries, and that was really pretty. I thought that worked really well. So now I've got my tracing. And when we print, the image is reversed. So, and I can also see it's a little bit too big, but that's okay. If I was to transfer this to the block this way up, it would print in reverse. So what I need to do is reverse my design for the transfer, and then it'll print the same way that I drew it. So I'm going to have to modify my leaves a little bit up here because they are a little bit too big for the block. So we'll get to that in a second. First, I'll start tracing it on. So graphite is a great way of transferring an image to a block. If you trace the back of a graphite drawing, the graphite of the drawing will transfer to the surface of paper or of lino. You can draw onto lino blocks freehand if you like. I've done that in the past too, but sometimes it's nice to have sketches that you can transfer. It all just depends on how you feel and what you prefer, but you do whatever you think suits you best. So now I'm just going to trace around the back of the design to transfer the graphite. It doesn't matter if there are a couple of little bits that don't transfer because this is just going to act as a map for my design in a way. Little things constantly change throughout the printing process, and it's something that you just embrace because that's what printing is all about. It's about editing and designing as you go along a lot of the time. You can be very calculated about it, of course, but sometimes it's fun, especially for casual little pieces like this. Sometimes it's fun just to let things happen. So here we go. And when I get to the top of here, I might just foreshorten this a little bit because it's just a bit too long for the tag. And like I say, if it doesn't all transfer, it doesn't matter one bit, it's just that it gets it into the right position. So there we go. So I'll put that aside and I'll show you the block. So there's the block where I've transferred the design. So you can see it's a little bit patchy in places, but it really doesn't matter because all this is a guide for my carving. So let me just firm this design up a little bit with my pencil. And now this design is reversed from the sketch that you saw, so when I do come to print this, it will print the right way around, or the way around that I wanted it to print. I don't think it would have mattered really if it had been reversed. It would have still been a nice little gift tag. It really doesn't matter, but for some prints, obviously it really does to have the image reversed. And if you don't reverse it, you're not going to end up with a result that you expected or wanted necessarily. So just drawing these little leaves here. Okay, so there we are. I've drawn out my design on my lino. So this lino here, just a quick note about lino, this lino here that I'm using is grey lino, and it's the sort of, well, it's what people often say is the old-fashioned lino, the sort of stuff that you used to use at school, which was very tough. This is actually not as bendy as it could be. It's not actually old lino, it's just that it's very, very cold in my studio today. So sometimes it's good to put it on a radiator, or just somewhere warm, or in front of a heater or something, or under a radiator, just so that it softens up a little bit. But this is the stuff that a lot of people will remember using if they tried Linocut in school. You can also get a different type of lino. You can get a few different types of lino. So this is another one that you can get, and this is a soft cut lino. I prefer the old-fashioned grey. The soft cut lino I find tends to be maybe a bit too soft. It's much easier to carve, I will say that. It's smooth. It's very smooth and very soft to carve. But I sometimes find that when you come to print with the soft cut lino, because it's so soft, it seems to squish the ink down more and you get slightly less defined edges to your print, less defined outlines and things. So it's something that I quite like to play around with if I'm testing a design, but I tend not to use it for final designs for that reason. But it's all personal preference. If you like soft cut lino and it suits your designs, then, you do whatever is best for you. That's what it's all about. So yeah, so this is grey lino anyway. So now that we've got our sketch transferred to our block, we need to start carving. And before you start to carve, you need to think about exactly what you want to leave in place and what you want to take away. Because it's easy to get started in carving, get carried away, and then find that you've taken out a chunk of something that needed to stay put. All of the elements that want to be inked up and appear as a final print need to be left uncarved. So I'm going to clear away all of this space around this design in between the leaves, and I'm going to leave these small, spines or leaves, or needles, whatever you want to call them, and these ribbons and the berries and decor, and I'm going to clean away all of this outside area. So it's going to be quite fiddly, but it shouldn't take too long, so we'll get onto the carving process next. So when it comes to carving, I use a piece of this, I don't know what you would call it, it's sort of foamy stuff, but it's non-stick matte. And you don't really want your lino block to slide around while you're carving or going through the carving process, because that just makes things too difficult. It makes life too difficult. We're not about that. So the tools that I use are file tools, and they're very fine. I use a V gouge and a U gouge. These are my favourite tools. But if you're just starting out with Linocut, you can get something like this. So this is just a small plastic lino cutter. And the handle comes, and it usually is supplied with 5 to 8 different little blades here. And what you do is you just untwist this and you can just slot the blades in. So you can change from a V to a U, different sizes of tools, different types of tools. And you can get those for pence. I mean, in art shops, I think single blades like this will cost you something like 50 to 60p. Or they did last time I bought them, and that wasn't that long ago. And these handles themselves, pretty resilient, and they'll cost you probably about £3 for the handle. And I think the kits run about £5 to £6 with the blades. So it's really, it's quite affordable. And so if you do want to try Linocut printmaking, then I recommend just getting your hands on a set like that, just to start with, and then you can move on and get the tools that you prefer if you decide that you want to take it a bit further. So yeah, I'm going to start with my V gouge, because what I want to do is clear away the outsides of the design just to keep it safe. So I generally don't start out clearing larger areas. I tend to start with my outlines, because then I know that I can get the outlines cleared and then I can just clear away what's left after that. So the fiddly part is the first part for me. Okay, so the outline's been carved, so you can see that there. So now that gives me a good guide to start clearing away the space around my design using my U-gouge. Something else I quite like to do while I'm carving, at different stages in the process, is to take a quick rubbing just to check what the design's looking like. So just use like a chubby pencil or a crayon or something like that, and you just lay a piece of paper over your design and just take a quick rubbing, and you can get an idea of how it's shaping up. It's quite nice to check the progress like this, and it reassures you that your design's coming up as you intended it to. So you can see there, my outlines are clear on that rubbing. And I can see that I've cleared away the areas around the pieces that I want to keep, and now I can go on to clear away the rest of the space with my U-gouge. I think ribbons are actually quite nice in and of themselves as just little pieces of print anyway. They're quite attractive. Okay, so now that I've finished carving, just give it a wipe down. That's our result there. And I'm just going to do another quick rubbing to see what we've got. Just make sure it's what I expected. And then I can make moderations if I need to, if any of it's not quite as I expected it to be. Okay, so that's the difference between the outline and the fully carved piece. So I think that looks okay. So now I think what I'm going to do is clean up here, and we'll go on to do a test print to make sure it is exactly what we expect it to be. And then we'll go on and print our tags. Okay, so let's do some printing. So I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow ink with blue relief ink. And I just use this, it's actually from an old picture frame. And it's just a perfect flat surface to roll my ink out on, but you can use any piece of flat plastic or glass, or I've even used the surface of my desk before. So, whatever you have handy is fine. So I'm just going to take a bit of each of those and I'm going to mix them. And I think I'm going to print quite a big batch of these. But I want a nice deep green colour. So I'm just going to mix that with my palette knife. And to get it a nice deep green colour, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a tiny touch of black at the end. So I'm just taking equal amounts each time. I'm mixing it quite a lot here because I'm going to do a bigger batch, but I'm just going to show a few for the video, for the sake of the video. And this is just water-based relief ink. And it mixes really, really nicely. Okay, let me just add a touch of black. I'm just going to pop it in the corner there so I don't get too much into my ink. Just to bring it down to a dark green. Yeah, that's looking better. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brayer and I'm going to roll some of this out. And you want a thin coat of it, you don't want it to be too thick, so take a little of the ink and just roll it out into a thin layer. And just keep rolling until your brayer is coated with a thin coat of the ink. And thin is where it's at. It doesn't want to be too thick, otherwise you're going to get a very muddy print. So now we're going to ink up the surface of the block. And I'm going to quickly do a test print, just to make sure that everything's in the right place. And the print is going to look how I want it to look. So just get a nice even thin coat of ink on our block. And I'll place my paper. And then with my Baron, I'm just going to make small circles to transfer the ink. And you don't need to be too rough about it, just apply even pressure. And there we go. So I think I quite like that because I'm going to add a little bit of finish into it, which I'm going to show you a bit later on, but there we go. So there is our test print. And I think that's quite pretty. So now we'll carry on and we'll move on to our tags. So again, we'll just roll out a thin layer of ink. Nice and thin. We don't want it to be muddy. And we'll ink up our block again. Making sure that it's all evenly coated with a thin layer of the ink. And then we'll take one of our tags and we'll position it over our block. Take our baron again and repeat the process. And then lift it off. And now we've got our little gift tag. So yesterday, when we completed our print, I just wanted to point out that when you complete your proof print, if you don't particularly like these little incidental marks that you find on your print when it's being completed, then do a test print and then just remove them. You can see them quite clearly showing up on the block here, these little incidental bits of texture. I like them, so I decided to keep them. But obviously, like I say, if that's something that you prefer not to see on your final print, then you can just remove those before you go ahead and print your gift tags. That was just something I wanted to quickly point out before we get started. So now I'm going to finish these little gift tags off and I'm going to add some detail to them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some red berries to some of them and I'm going to add some gold detail to the others. And I did print a big batch of them. So I've got a lot to do this afternoon, but I'll show you these as a demonstration and you can see what the finished item is going to look like. So I'm going to start off with some berries. And this is just red acrylic paint. It's vermilion red and it shows up quite nicely on the craft background. And I've also got some gold, thinned down gold acrylic here to use. So I'm just going to tip in some red details. Some little red berries. It looks really nice against the brown of the craft paper. And there you can see. I think that looks very festive. So I'm going to do 3 like that. And then I'm going to move on and do the rest using the gold. So there we go. It's very therapeutic doing a whole batch of these little things after you've printed them. Very Christmassy, you can put your carols on in the background. It's a nice activity, Christmas activity. Okay, so those are our berries. And I'm going to move on. And I'm going to add some gold detailing to these two here. So I'm going to just tip in the ribbon, or the swirl, whatever you'd like to call it. I'm going to tip that in gold. And thinned down gold acrylic paint looks really pretty against the craft background too, so. and one more. I quite like to finish prints off sometimes with a small painted detail. Okay, there we go. There's the gold detail on this one here. So we've got our two versions now. Got our little red berries and our gold, so those are our tags there. And what I'll do next, once they've dried, is add the twine, which I've got set here. And then I'll show you what the final outcome looks like. During the time it took for those first ones to dry, I did the rest of my batch, as you can see here. So I've got lots of tags for Christmas now. I'm just going to take some of the twine that I showed earlier on. I'm just going to pop it into the tags to finish them off. And then we'll see what they look like in place. That's one. And that's two. Okie doke. So let's see what they look like. And we'll just tie them in place. And there we go. And there we go, I think that looks quite sweet. And let's try this one too. Just tuck those into the sides. And there we go, there's that one as well. I really hope you enjoyed this little tutorial and have fun making your own tags. If you enjoyed this, I'd love a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more, perhaps you'll subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.